This episode of the Totally Rad Show is brought to you by Squarespace. Coming up, before you see the movie, check out the comic for X-Men First Class.
It is a summer of blockbuster comic book movies, and the next one that you should be seeing this weekend, X-Men First Class. So we thought it'd be a good opportunity to check in on the X-Men First Class comic book upon which it is ostensibly based. Although the truth of the matter is probably much different than that. X-Men First Class was a 2007 comic by Jeff Parker and Roger Cruz that looked at the lost missions of the original X-Men crew. So Stan Lee created the X-Men with Cyclops, Marvel Girl, Iceman, Beast, and Angel. And of course, the storied history of the X-Men has changed up that roster numerous times. But this is looking at that first class of X-Men working under Charles Xavier and the classic age of the X-Men. But the comic book series takes them and puts them in the modern times and kind of retells that sliding history that Marvel likes to do. So it turns out really not very much related to what the film is going to be, but this is the book that somebody walking into a comic book store, fresh out of seeing the movie, would go, I want to see X-Men First Class, and pick this up. So Alex, tell me what the experience might be like for that person picking up this comic.
Well, as you said, I think it'll be a completely different situation. I mean, we're not talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis here, you know what I mean?
Interestingly, they don't have the courage in the comics to keep the correct, or not correct, but original period like they do in the films, which is odd.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a little odd because it seems like that's the exciting part, is mutants.
The origin story.
Yeah, is mutants in a time where we don't see mutants usually, but they existed, you know what I mean? Like, seeing the beginnings part. So, you know, I really had a hard time with this. I didn't like it very much. And I especially didn't like the first issue, mainly because it felt so like wah wah.
It's written in a very old style.
Golden age of comic,
but not only that, like, you know, there's like, oh, we're on a plane. Well, I hear they're working on a plane that can lift right out of the thing. Wouldn't that be neat? I mean, it's like, what is this, an 80s? It looked like a sitcom that was about the 80s that the jokes were just all like, I'm on a phone. And literally the first issue was like that, about except about the history of X-Men. And it was like, we don't need any of that. I mean, you go into this wanting to see the story of the creation, not the jokes of wink, wink, we know what you're gonna get.
And the Xbox gag.
Oh, the Xbox gag. So that
a
stuff,
little cheesy.
That stuff was like, give me a break. Good news is, all that's in the first issue, and there's not as much going forward. So then the stories become a little bit more interesting. So I think it's sort of worth a read when you get delved down into some of the stories.
And you say stories because each issue was what they call a one-shot, which is basically a self-contained adventure
Monster
in
of
each
the Week
issue.
kind of a thing. Really quick. They're each all very quick reads. The only other thing I had was I didn't really like the art style. It was a little it was a little like manga for me. You know what I mean? Like, I thought Pikachu was gonna jump out at any time. You know what I mean? With that sort of Japanese like a shocked look on the face with like the squeak squeak. You know what I mean? Like, it was very that. Whereas I wanted to see more like, I don't know, I just wished it was in that old time period.
Huh, interesting. There's definitely a lightness to this that is not characteristic of the X-Men. X-Men are known for being their sort of emo, melancholy selves post-Claremont. So I'm assume that you didn't like the lightness.
I actually liked the art style quite a bit.
Me too, I liked it a lot.
In fact, it actually felt painterly at times in the coloring. I didn't get the manga vibe from it, but I liked it. I liked the art. Strongest suit, I would say, of this. To be honest, didn't hate it. Certainly not as bogged down in pre-story or even origins, retellings of origin stories that, like the Green Lantern or Rebirth specifically, not the others, or the one we did recently.
Thor?
Thor, thank you, sir. Not as bogged down in the politics of superhero dumb. A little bit more, because it's Monster of the Week, a little more streamlined, very palatable, easy reads, fine writing. You know, it's funny how I thought you were going to say, Dan, not Man in Tights guy, you know, right? Which is true, but it occurred to me while reading this is that, I don't know, man, the only comic I read in issues, have read in issues really, since I was out of high school, is Buffy Season 8. And those Buffy comics, they're superhero comics. They are Monster of the Week with some overarching stuff, with plenty of overarching stuff, but they're Monster of the Week comics, and I read those and I go, I need some personality. You know, I think the thing that's missing from these, and missing from a lot of these typical Man in Tights stuff that isn't Bendis or Kayvon or Garth Ennis, or like, that's why I like those writers, is because they have such a strong voice. And I love the personality they put into the writing and the dialogue, whereas this is just bland, very sitcom-y, very old school, just this character says, you know, this, I mean, they all kind of have interchangeable dialogue, but they're just talking to each other.
Yeah.
Bobby was a little different. He was the only one that had a little spark.
A little bit, but
little
not
bit.
quite enough for me.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. When these were coming out in issues, they had these wonderful painted covers.
Yeah.
Yes.
That were just gorgeous.
Yeah.
And really made it seem like, wow, they're gonna go back and we're gonna get back into its roots and it's austere and interesting. And then you open it up and it's this kind of silly introduction for, I think, a younger audience is what they were intended. It didn't strike my fancy then. It doesn't strike my fancy now. And when I heard that the film was being made, I was like, they're making an X-Men First Class movie? Oh my God, that's not a property that I want to see on the big screen. It's gonna be silly and cheesy and lame. So it's interesting how the movie has moved so far away from the property that it shares its namesake. I love the art. I think Roger Cruz is gorgeous. I see what you're saying with the manga stuff, but I love it. Is vibrant and clear, and the lines are always very strong, and his action moments are always very interesting and unique.
Yeah.
It's got a vibe. It's got a youthy vibe and a very old school classic, almost Stan Lee like. Almost feels like it was written the Marvel way, you know, which is where they used to draw it first and then he would just write in the words. Because all the words kind of describe what you're seeing. Like, well, I'm gonna fly up into the sky and take a bigger look. It's like, well, no, we see a picture of him doing that. We don't need you to tell us. But it is an easy read. It's a shame that it's so disparate from what the film is going to be because I think it's misleading to the audience.
Yeah, I think people are going to pick it up and go, oh, well, that's not. And
I
then
almost wish they could do a First Class comic book that is about
the actual First Class.
the forming of the First Class. That's what's so exciting to me. I don't even know if the movie's really digging into this because it seems like it's that sort of a branching off point for just X-Men in the 60s and even the timeliness of all that, as opposed to, like, it is fun to see what is the first thing you do? You start this school and, like, I almost want it to be Harry Potter for mutants.
Right.
You know, which the movie doesn't seem to be Harry Potter for mutants. But I love that too. I think I'm gonna love it in a different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
But like
interesting.
Harry Potter for Mutants would have been kind of cool, and I would have loved like it'd been a great TV show too.
Yeah, Harry
Oh,
Potter.
they were talking about the X-Men TV show for a while. Weren't they doing a New Mutants TV show for a while?
Well, there was
Which is basically
it was
that.
called. It was called like Mutant X.
Oh,
or
right, yeah.
X Mutants or something.
Oh,
which
yeah.
Because New
it was
Mutants, the
fake.
comic, was basically that.
But yeah, I mean, so even this is just like, yes, it's their first adventures. It's not really like, here we are figuring it all out, coming together, origin story stuff.
Well, yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting that you brought up Bendis because what he's doing right now in Amazing Spider-Man, if someone is looking for what this comic basically is, done really a lot better, even starring a couple of the same characters, I would point them toward the current run of Ultimate Spider-Man. Now, it's
Ultimate Spider-Man or Amazing Spider-Man?
Ultimate.
Yeah, you did say amazing.
I did?
First.
It's first,
but
yeah.
Pardon me, Ultimate
good.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, yeah.
Bendis writes Ultimate in the Ultimate Universe, and he has since its inception. They did a relaunch starting with a new issue #1 a while back, and that is leading up to the Death of Spider-Man, which is currently happening right now this summer. It's a big event across the entire Ultimate Universe, and it's some of the strongest Spider-Man writing and some of the strongest young superheroes. He did this Amazing Friends arc where he took Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four, and he took Bobby Drake from the X-Men, Ice and Fire, like the cartoon, and they start living with Aunt May and Peter Parker. It's awesome, and so it's like buddies that all go into the same school.
Is this Ultimate Spider-Man? I read Ultimate Spider-Man first trade in like when 2000, like
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just that on.
They did a
'cause
relaunch.
I loved that. It was
Yeah.
very similar to the movie. At the
It
time.
kind of lost its way, and I think they knew that, and that's why it was relaunched. It was relaunched with art that you will probably hate because it's very manga. Very
Well, I don't dislike
manga.
it. I just was I wanted it to be not that for this.
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what I mean?
I
I don't mind manga. It's just that.
But it's some of the strongest writing. There's a wonderful couple of issues where someone steals his identity, and it's done in such a unique, interesting way that I've never seen anyone do. Because there's an issue in this first class trade where they get their identity stolen, and it's done in a very trite, silly way. And it was reminding me of
Yeah.
the Bendis arc. I highly recommend that to people, and it's having a really big climax that's going to result in yet another relaunch with a new #1. We don't know what's going to happen to Spider-Man. He is going to obviously be dead because it says
theoretically.
death of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It's the Ultimate
I'm
Universe.
Sure that
they can
will
do
happen.
anything.
I'm sure that will be permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody, be sure to stick around for this day in rad history. But first, we want to thank our sponsors, Jeff Kanata.
The Squarespace! I get to tell you about the Squarespace, or as I like to call it, the Squarespace. I don't know why I call it that.
So you're Italian.
Yeah.
It's true. Squarespace is a fast
Hey,
and
it's
easy way to
Squarespace.
create high quality blogs, portfolios, any kind of website. If you have questions or need help, Squarespace provides every member with amazing support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I can tell you from personal experience, I have used that.
Yep.
My blog is on Squarespace. My girlfriend just made a website for my sister for
Nice.
her cake baking company and use Squarespace. It looks awesome. And you can choose from over 60 professionally designed templates, customize them, then add content from your computer, which is exactly what my girlfriend did. You can add content from your iPhone or your iPad because they have awesome apps.
Crazy.
It's easy to do it. I use my app all the time. I love it. And many of the internet's highest traffic websites are powered by Squarespace, not to mention our websites.
Yeah.
Dan's One Cool Thing a Day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alex's website. Check out squarespace.com/TRS to get a 2-week free trial and learn more. It is the best way to make an awesome looking website easily.
Epic. All right, people, we will see you.
Mañana.
Hey, Dan's back.
Tomorrow on the show, we play Versus.
So today is June 2nd, and on this day in rad history, in 1835, P.T. Barnum, Philip Timson Barnum, and his circus first began touring the United States and gave us Water for Elephants.
I was just saying, and a mere 160
Years later, we get Water for Elephants,
Yes.
the unabridged, unauthorized autobiography of Paul Timson.
Of his competitors.
Didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, well. Thank you at Resolaki for sending that in.
Was that? Is that the only still enduring circus? I wonder. I ask you guys without any idea.
Well,
Yeah,
Barnum and
let me
Bailey.
pull from my knowledge banks.
Circus encyclopedia.
No, Cirque du Soleil was around back then.
Yeah.
It was just on the sun.
Yeah, just one guy bending his body.
Yeah, Bill Cirque du Soleil.